Hello, and welcome to this webinar on the new legislative framework, the NLF. Whether it's speakers, gaming consoles, a mic, or a laptop, companies need clear rules and procedures to demonstrate compliance with the relevant legislations and regulations. Consumers also need to feel safe and trust the brand they buy. The CE mark that you see on the box of a product is the signal for that trust and compliance. But behind the CE mark, there is a sophisticated system, the NLF, which is the engine behind circulating products and services and placing them on the EU single market, while ensuring compliance with the relevant laws. Today, we will dive deep to explore and see how the NLF works, and to deep dive also on our proposal, how to keep it fit for digital and green transitions, and to power Europe's competitiveness. But before that, a little introduction about Digital Europe. We are the leading trade association representing digitally transforming industries in Europe. We stand for a regulatory environment that enables European businesses and citizens to prosper from digital technologies. We wish Europe to grow, attract, and sustain the world's best digital and technology companies. Together with our members, about 109 corporate members and 41 national trade associations, we shape the industry policy positions on all relevant legislative matters and contribute to the development and implementation of EU relevant policies. Collectively together, we represent 45,000 companies. Now let's go to our agenda and start this webinar. We will talk today about the NLF principles, our proposal for an NLF fit for the twin transitions, and then we will present a use case on the digital instructions and how the NLF should evolve on that. And then we open it for questions and answers. You can type in on your questions on the Q&A box whenever you see fit. Please don't wait until the end. And now we will start with the first part. Our first speaker, Sebastian Ut, a lead engineer on standardization at Sony Europe and the chair of SENELEC TC 210 on electromagnetic compatibility. SENELEC is one of the 3 European standardization organizations that develop standards which are used to show compliance with EU laws. Today, Sebastian will present the NLF concepts and our proposal on the NLF fit for the twin transitions. Sebastian, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Omar. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining this webinar. Let's speak about the NLF principles. In the next slide, we will see that the new legislative framework is actually an evolution over the time of some approaches. We used to have an old approach where we had administrative requirements and technical specifications directly in the law. And tomorrow, it will be exactly 40 years ago that the new approach was published in the official journal. This new approach, which is still new after 40 years, I'm not sure. Okay. Yeah, here we have the administrative requirements and the essential requirements, which are in the Legislative Act. What we mean by essential requirement is the product is safe, the product should not disturb, but the technical details on how to comply with this policy objectives are defined in the standards. So we have a general reference to standards. When we talk about new approach, this is what we're talking about. In 1993, we finally got the CE marking. So this, I would go deeper later on what it means. Then in 2008, we had a couple of developments from a legislative perspective. about market surveillance, and more particularly what we call the NLF decision. So this NLF decision gave kind of rationalization of the new approach. I will go in deeper details later on, but some of the points of the new approach were maybe too far in what on the power of the standards, but this was rationalized. And also we have this common legislative framework, which is a kind of template for all EU legislation that provides clear role and responsibilities of each actors. And I will go in deeper on this description later on. And thanks to NLF, we have a better harmonization between acts. At least, yeah, it was the case in the beginning, but we saw that this last year some deviations. In 2019, we had a new market surveillance and compliance of product regulation. So this one was really focusing on some of the points related to market surveillance and how to access the European market for some categories of products. And we, for example, for distance sales, we have now better coverage of this kind of distribution schemes, and we have also some reinforcement of market surveillance. Yeah. So, what is the legal basis of the NLF, of new legislative framework or common legislative framework? Actually, we have the decision 768, which is only the template for all EU legislation. It is supported by the CE marking, accreditation of CE marking regulation, the 765/2008, which defines the CE marking. But linked to that, we have also the market surveillance regulation. I already explained what it is about. And also the regulation on standardization, which is also an important tool that supports the NLF. Now we have almost 30 sectorial acts that are aligned with NLF. So you see that we have many legislation in Europe, and thankfully NLF allows some alignment. And we have also the GPSR, so the General Product Safety. In some aspects is linked to NLF, even if it's not recognized as an NLF legislation. But for example, for consumer products, it provides the rules on non-compliance management. So GPSR is also in some way linked to NLF and supports NLF. Yeah. So the aim of this common legislative framework or new legislative framework, first, of course, is the free circulation of goods in the EU. When we think about it today, we have tendency to forget that we are 27 member states, and we used to have different legislation for EMC, for safety and kind of things in each member states. So now we have a common legislative framework for all these things with free circulation of goods. Simplification, we have the same rule, whatever requirements or policy objective we need to cover, and we offer adequate protections to consumers, but not only consumers. Many legislations actually concerns business to business distributions, and we need also to think that NLF is not limited to consumer products. How we do that? So the NLF has created identical legislation on all EU without international barriers. It's really its aim. EU legislation to provide essential requirements. So this is really the new approach principles. We define essential requirements, defining what results need to be achieved, what is the policy objective. And we have identical standards in all Europe, determining necessary level of protections, providing a presumption of conformity to the essential requirements of the EU legislation. So you see already that the standards are an essential tool in support of the NLF and the new approach principles. And we have all these identical format requirements formal requirements that cover all product legislation. And we can go now deeper in what I mean here. These are the NLF requirements. Typically, we have those that are on the top of the iceberg, those that everybody can see on his product. We can see the CE mark, which is really the key label that shows that the product is in scope of one of the NLF Act. We need to have accompanying instructions on safety information. So this is something that is required by NLF. We need to have the manufacturer on importer addresses on the product. And we need to have the type, batch, serial number, or whatever allows identification of the product. So this is what we can see on all products that were currently placed on the market. And we have the things that are at the bottom of the iceberg, and this is probably the biggest part. We have the definition of the role and responsibilities of economic operators. The same with notified body. I will quickly explain later on what is a notified body. We have management of non-compliance. We have technical documentation. So technical documentation is all the evidences that a product complies with the EU legislation. And we have definition of conformity assessment procedure. And finally, we have this DOC, but DOC, I put it in the bottom, but as you can see, depending on the act, sometimes it's required to be provided with the product. So this is why it's moving target here. It's kind of deviations we can see compared to the NLF template for some acts. Yeah, in the next slide. We have then for a product, so here it's a magnificent amplifier. We have on this amplifier three acts that apply on it. And we have specific sectoral specific requirements or vertical requirements. What is the essential requirement for radio equipment directive? Yeah, we need to use the radio spectrum in the right way. The product must be safe, it must disturb other things. For us, we need to have good chemicals. For eco-design, we need to be careful with the poor consumption of the product. Each of this legislation define what conformity assessment modules applies to it, and whether or not we need to use a notified body for the conformity assessment. But for all the rest, everything is horizontal, everything is aligned, and so we need the CE mark, we need the manufacturer address, we need this kind of things. The economic operator has the same kind of responsibilities. Yeah. So, and talking about this economic operator roles and responsibilities, I put here a kind of summary on what all the responsibilities that each economic operator has. I will not go in deep details, but you see that we have many responsibilities. The manufacturers, he is responsible for everything. He can delegate some part of his responsibilities to notarized representative, which is located in Europe. The importer also has responsibilities in regards of the compliance of the products. The same with fulfillment service provider. And the most relaxed economic operator is distributor, but even as distributors, they need to ensure that some of the aspects are covered properly by the other actors. So you see here it was a kind of NLF really enforced importer and distributors' responsibilities compared to the previous approach. This is one of the key change of NLF compared to new approach. Yeah. Good. The next slide. Yeah, one of the key concepts also of the NLF is making available and placing on the market. What we need to remember is a product must comply with the all EU acts and also standards indirectly when it is placed on the market. By placing, what we mean by placing on the market, placing on the market is the first making available of a product in Europe. So you can see that the red POM is the moment when a product must comply with the EU legislation. And then we can continue to distribute the product all over Europe, all over the single market, until it reaches the end user. So this is a really important concept. On the this is left side. This is the case where product is imported. So here, in general, this is the release for free circulation in Europe, which is considered as placing on the market in Europe. For product which is manufactured, is the first making available. So either you offer it or there is a purchase order of a product, then you consider that the product is placed on the market at that date. I want really also to highlight the what it means when we have a new legislation or when we have a new standard that comes into effect in Europe. What does that imply? When we have new requirement coming in, the manufacturers needs really to consider what are the necessary actions. And here I try to describe and to summarize what are really these necessary actions. First, we need to be aware of a new law, of all the standards. Then we need to study the requirement, check if my product is in scope of this requirement. We need to assess the impact. Potentially, maybe I need to change the design of my product. I need to test it. If I have to go to notified body, I have to submit my documentation to notified body. And then I see whether or not my product is compliant. If my product is compliant, I can just update the DOC, potentially adapt also the mass production, because if I change the design, I need also to adapt my factory, and I can continue to place new units of products on the EU market. But if not, I need to consider that my product is end of life, and I need to really consider that by the compulsory date, I cannot place such kind of product on the market anymore. So I need really to make an action to ensure that all those products are not just wasted. In the next slide, the conformity assessment procedure. So here I explained a bit notified body. So the notified body is a third party which is independent and is involved depending on what level of involvement the module or the conformity assessment procedure is selected by the legislator. It can be limited just to examine the manufacturer's technical documentations, but it can also carry out testing. They can examine manufacturer's quality system. They can issue U-type examination certificate or certificate of conformity, or they can, in design phase, they can be involved during the design phase or during the production phase. So you see, it really depends on what modules is selected, but all these modules are described in the common legislative framework, and the legislator just need to select which one is the most relevant for depending on the risk of the product categories that are covered by the legal act. But of course, for us, what it means, it implies additional costs and delays for manufacturers to access the market access, because these people are not working for free, of course, and we are usually not their unique customer, and they have sometimes a waiting list before we can go have an assessment of a product. So it implies some delays. This is why we really prefer the internal production control, because here the manufacturer is fully responsible for assessing the risk and prepares technical documentation. And as a result of this, he issues by himself the declaration of conformity, and he ensures that the mass production is in line with the technical documentation. So here we have clearly full responsibility, which is also true when we have notified body involvement, but we have these additional steps to do, actually. And sometimes it's not really, we have limited added value for these steps, to be honest. And in some legislation, unfortunately, when we don't have the standard cited, we have to go to notified body. Yeah, it's not the case in all, but in some legislation, this is exists. Yeah. Yes, so I described a bit what is the essential requirement already. This is the compulsory but high-level requirement. So this is what to do, what we need to take care of when we place a product on the market. But how to demonstrate that we satisfy the requirement of the legislation, this is described in the standards. So the European standards are voluntary. They prescribe detailed specifications on limits. So this is really where we find how to assess the product, how do we test it, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And when the standards are cited in the official journal, it provides a presumption of conformity with the essential requirements. So they are developed by the European Standardization Organizations, such as CEN, NLF, and DIGITALEUROPE. And all the standards are consensus-based built, I would say. We have, of course, the industrials who are there, but we have also in the ESOs the market service authorities who attend there, and we also have sometimes some NGOs. For example, we have the radio amateurs, we have broadcast associations, and this kind of thing who also attends these kinds of meetings. So here I put some links, but I think you will see this later on. We can go on the next slide. So why do we need to cite the standards in the official journal? First point, the idea of this was to communicate a clear list of state-of-the-art technical specifications covering the EU policy objective. It's not always obvious for an SME to know what is the right specification to apply on this product. So the list of standards published in the official journal was a clear communication to everybody that their standards are the ones that you need to take care of if you want to access the European market with respect of the requirements of the objective. So this was really the aim of this. The importer and market surveillance, including customs, also have a simple acceptance procedures for market access. It means, the standard is in the list, so the product should be compliant. This was also the things, and also notified bodies was also use this list to identify what level of protection is required. So when we don't have a standard, we can do it, of course, but here we have more risk of having divergent interpretation on how to satisfy the legal requirements. And at the end, we might have the risk of not having a proper implementation of the legal requirement. So really the standard are the key for EU market. And if we don't use a standard, actually, this is bricolage, if I can say, Declaration of conformity. So it's one of the requirements that applies to manufacturers. So a manufacturer needs always to publish or to write a new declaration of conformity with a certain template. So I put here an example of an EU declaration of conformity that exists. It's the common structure for all directives aligned to the NLF, with some exceptions. Sometimes we have some legislation that requires pictures of the device and kind of things. But the aim of the NLF was to have it aligned. Declaration of conformity is always against the relevant legislation. So we declare compliance to the EMC directive, to low voltage directive, to ROS directive, etc. It should be translated into languages requested by the member states into which a product is intended to be distributed. So it needs to be in French, it needs to be in Italian, it needs to be in German if you want to distribute in those countries. We have one single declaration covering all relevant legislations, and an electronic document is usually accepted, despite it's not really clear in the law. Unless specific acts requires the DOC to accompany the product. In this case, it needs to be in paper format, which is much more complex for us. And this is why it's in red, because we don't like it. Marking on user documentations. Let's go on the next slides. We need to have the CE mark. So the CE mark, I think everybody knows it. But in addition, we need also to have the type, batch, or serial number physically in the product. We need to have all this manufacturer importer address physically in the product, and sometimes we have also, in addition, some sectorial specific mark. I put here the Willy Bean, for example, but we might have other things. Needs to be visible, it's indelible. So it's a lot of constraint for these physical markings. And we need also to have in paper format, translated in the languages of the destination country, all the safety information, and sometimes also additional instructions, such as EMC, the radio frequencies, or the eco label. So this one's on paper format, and most of us distributes 27 pages of paper that actually nobody really read it. Then we have this question now: how to fit with the twin transitions, with the green transition and with the digital transition. We have here some proposals. First, we need to make aware what has changed since 2008. In 2008, when we were talking about placing a product on the market, we were thinking about radio, safety, and efficiency chemicals, and that was almost it. We had this linear life of the product from the development to the waste, and we were communicating mainly with mailboxes or fax. Maybe it was also already there, and that was how it was in 2008 when NLF concept was created. Now we are in the second quarter of the 21st century, and we have more and more things coming in, such as cybersecurity, such as interoperability, right to repair, data privacy, recyclability, power consumption, traceability. So we have all these things that has come in addition to what existed in 2008. And we have also the concept of circular economy. We want to reduce the waste of the product. So we want to be able to repair, we want to be able to refurbish, to remanufacture, or even recycle the product. And sometimes also, even during the use by the end user, we may need to update the product. And in addition to that, we stopped communicating via mailboxes, by physical mailboxings. And now we have the possibility to have access to all documentation just with a QR code. So this is where it was 20 years ago and where we are going to now. So we have necessary targeted adjustment defined, and we have some definitions for new economic operators, roles, and product life cycle concepts. We have how to enable digital compliance. And in the last part, I will talk about placing on the market of software. So this was reflected in the download. It's a magnificent paper, and I put here a link to it that explains in 4 pages, I think, more or less, the concept of how we see the future of the NLF. For the clarification definition for new economical role of operators, we have the issue with making available spare components and repair. The right to repair, of course, promotes repair, and that's obvious. And legal acts impose or encourage availability of spare parts. We have it for the new SPA. We have some French repairability index. We have really this duty now to provide spare parts even to end users for their own repair, and this changed a lot of things actually. Today NLF do not exclude spare part as such. There is nothing in the NLF that clearly says the spare part is not in. And we have recently a discussion with the EMC, the expert group, and today it seems that products, a component which is provided for own repair should be considered in the scope of the EMC directive, which for us would be a nightmare. So we need really to consider that assessing compliance of a component separately from the good implies burdensome requirements in terms of conformity assessment procedures, documentation, or marking. So it's clearly an obstacle for repair. It clearly contradicts the aim of circular economy. We want to have a simple a simple way of making such components available in the market. And in the next slides, we provide these basic principles when we make it available separately. The spare part should be basically out of scope of the NLF requirements in terms of markings, of separated technical documentation, of having a dedicated DOC to this component. But it should still offer the same level of protection as implemented when the original product was placed on the market. Because if I want to have my components available in 5 years, I cannot today manufacture components that will be compliant with a law or a standard that doesn't exist yet. But I cannot continue to manufacture this kind of components for years and years, actually. So this is what we want to highlight with these 2 slides. Yeah. Also about refurbishing and remanufacturing a second hand of product. We believe that ESPR is quite a good basis and should be used as reference for this new definitions of refurbishing and remanufacturing. I think I'm all over time already, so I will not go in deep details about it. But we need to be aware that we have some level of responsibilities that exist, and we should think maybe to expand the ESPR principles in some other legislation to make it simple. Again, not to add new requirements, but to have it clear and simple for everybody to understand what we have to do when we do such kind of operations. Yeah. And then I think I will give back the floor to Omar to introduce Tarek, I think.
Yes, thank you very much. And this is our second targeted adjustment proposal, which is on enabling digital compliance. We would like to provide a use case on the digital instructions, the user manuals and the instructions that you get today in the box of any product you buy. So the situation today is that if you would like to upgrade your own library in your home, the best thing is to buy products. Because if you buy, for example, an oven, you will get a book. If you go to a refrigerator, you will have your doctoral thesis with it. It's growing by the number of pages, killing more trees, and also it's a remarkable check for your ability to read. So you can also know when do you need reading glasses because of the very small fonts they are printed to make room for all these instructions. But at the end of the day, they are waste. They are wasted into some attic or even thrown away to recycling. And when you need them, you can't find them. So what we need to highlight here is that digital solutions can provide and are providing actually the simple solution for user manuals. And I'm happy today to have with me Tarek Al-Hawi from our member ZVI, who is currently, of course, a legal counsel there, but he's very involved in this work with his experts. And without much ado, Tarek, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Omar. Good afternoon to the audience. Thank you very much, Sebastian, for the very informative presentation on the whole NLF system. So, and I present today, as Omar mentioned, a use case that arises from this NLF system. Because of the obligations the manufacturers have from the NLF directives and regulations, and Sebastian already mentioned it, to provide a certain kind of information, what we summarize as information for use, containing the safety information, instructions, the user manual, but also declaration of conformity. And the question here was always, since I started in 2017 at the ZVI, how to provide it legally certain digitally, because what we last year this topic came up again, so we set up a task force on this special topic with more than 100 member companies joining this task force. We had a kickoff in July 2024, And what we discovered always is that there is legal uncertainty. And also Sebastian mentioned that the legal situation is not clear. And especially inside of the NLF directives and regulations, there are undefined legal terms, and also in the national implementing acts, like accompanied. So the products have to be accompanied by this information, by the instructions, by the safety information, and DOC. But the DOC is another topic, but it's also summarized to this information of use. But there is no, what we discovered, no explicit formal paper requirement, but there is legal uncertainty due to the interpretation. So the market surveillance authorities can interpret it, the national and European courts can interpret it, and also the literature, the legal literature. And so to be on the safe side, most of the manufacturers decide always to provide the whole information in paper form. So there was a progress in development in the recent legal history in the NLF. There is the new machinery regulation that allows for the B2B sector full digital provision of information online. It's very important to also have the possibility to provide it in a state-of-the-art way, because to access online is that what we want to achieve, not, for example, handing over a CD-ROM or data storage, which is not up to date. So we need a state-of-the-art way to provide this information digitally. And the new machinery allows that for the B2B sector. That we explicitly welcome, but it also establishes an explicit paper requirement for the so-called non-professional area, for non-professional users, for a certain kind of safety information. What means this is for the first time explicit paper requirement in the so-called EU secondary law, which is directly legally binding. Before it was this uncertain legal situation. Yes, for DOC there was some obligations, but for the instructions and for the safety information, it's the first time that it's in the EU secondary law. Of course, in some guidelines, especially in the blue guide, the general guideline for the NLF system, it was already mentioned that safety information should be accompanied or delivered in paper, but this is not directly legally binding. Now, de facto, this is a worsening in the machinery for the B2C sector, because there is this explicit paper requirement. So having that in mind, we built our position inside of the task force I mentioned, and we showed the advantages and the benefits for the end user, especially in the consumers, to have to get the information online and digitally. So it's easy access to all the different languages. Sebastian mentioned that you have to provide the information in 24 member state languages. And also you have the possibility, if you have the online access, that you can implement, for example, tutorials or videos and use plain language, use barrier-free access. And so you have many, many advantages and benefits for the end users. And one very important argument, and Omar mentioned in the introduction, is the sustainability argument, because the obligations also to provide this information in 24 languages, or a language the user can easily understand, of course, creates tons of paper waste. And this booklets and books are thrown away often, and so paper is wasted, CO2 emissions are rising, and that is what we also mentioned in our position. And then we also set up a website with a QR code. You can reach the website by the QR code. I don't know if you, Clara, could show it here, because we have one paper counter in real time. If it's not possible, then you can see it yourself by clicking the link afterwards. You will get the slides, and I guess the link will also be inside of the slides, and you can also scan the QR code. What we put on the website also, where we translated our position paper to 24 languages to show how easy it is to access the language versions online, and not having 24 languages on a booklet on your desk in front of you. So the next slide, please. Sebastian is showing you. So the above counter is the paper wasted due to the European product law since you visited the page, and the below number is the paper wasted due to European product law since we started our measurements in the 1st of January this year, to make it more visible. So we already in our position paper, we had some facts and figures, but more according to the waste of paper and the emissions of CO2 from the German industry, from some kind of sub-industries, from the domestic electrical appliance, consumer electronics, but as well as industrial sectors such as sensors, process automation, and some numbers that how big the waste and how big this emissions are. And then on basis of our position, we of course we sent our position to stakeholders on European and national level, to the Commission, to MEPs, and also German ministries. And I don't know by coincidence, but beginning of this year, the work program of the European Union of the European Commission for 2025 was published, and with one of the points is that they plan to publish an omnibus, so-called omnibus 3 package with paper reduction issues. So they are now working on a draft proposal for omnibus regulation. They will provide, I guess, end of May, the 21st, where they take this problem. And now we had already our positions, so we could have bilateral talks and discussions with the Commission. And when we had this discussions, and also Digital Europe was involved from the beginning, so we worked very good together with Digital Europe also on this topic. They asked for more clear numbers, not according to the waste of paper, but for cost issues. So maybe the next slide. So we went back with this question to our task force, and then we found some parameters for a calculation, how you can calculate the costs. So the Commission wanted to know what are the costs of the paper for the information providing in paper, and what are the potential cost savings when you switch from paper to a digital provision. Clara, the next page, maybe. Next slide. And so here on this table, we found some parameters within the task force, and these parameters is a basis for a cost calculation. These parameters are based on public source and information we received from our member companies, and you will get the slides in the annex. There are also the sources also listed. So you can use these parameters as a general calculation basis, but of course some of the member companies, they have their own variables and parameters. So on the next slide you see that we have also, on the basis of this table, we made a calculation example on the right side on this slide, that if, and this was from our perspective very moderately calculated, that if you have one page for the instructions per language, it means instructor safety information and the user manual, and one page for the declaration of conformity per European language, and you have together 48 pages, A-sized pages. And if we assume that every product has to be accompanied by these 48 pages, like an average value, and you take 1 million products, then you have 48 million A-size 4 pages, then you have 3 million square meters of printed page, kilograms of paper weight, 528 kilograms of wood weight. And then we come to the cost, and we just calculated paper costs in addition to the printing costs. So there are no logistic costs inside, there are no packing costs inside, no transportation, just the sheer paper and printing costs together. We came to, in this calculation example, to an amount of 1.172 million euros. And then we once again asked our members from the task force to give us input. And some of the members used the parameters presented on the table. and some have chosen internal variables to provide a more accurate estimate based on members' internal structure and supply chain. And so far until today, but we're receiving constantly input from our members until today, 14 member companies from the size, medium-sized to a very big, large group based on 1 year reported us just this 14 member company 6.6 billion A4 sized pages, which corresponds to approximately 193 million euro per year. We also calculated the tons of paper weight, the amount of paper, the amount of wood, the amount of paper, and also the CO2 emissions. And on this use case, you can see how important or how effective the NLF obligations and provisions could be. And this has an impact for the user as well as the companies, as well as the environment. And so it's very important that we are working on this. And we, of course, now have activities on the European level, also together with Digital Europe. And yeah, that's just a use case to show how the impact of such NLF rules are.
Thank you, Tarek, for your presentation. I give now the floor briefly to Sebastian to present the last point on software and to recap before we open for questions. Please be brief because we have some questions to answer. Thank you.
Okay, about the placing in the market of the software, actually, I think only one slide, so it should be brief. Yes, we had issued questions on the CRA on February 25. And in short, what we believe is the placing on the market of the software is the software release date. This is a clear and transparent concept, and historical software can be kept available because sometimes, we keep the software available for decades or even forever. Just because people has an old product and wants to still use it even 20 years later. So we need to keep the software available. But we were in such a situation, we are compliant only at the point when we make the software available for the first time. And this was the software release date. Yeah. Voilà. I think that's it.
Yeah.
On this slide.
Yes, if you would like to also present the last slide
Okay.
on conclusions, and then we move to Q&A.
Okay, we have here the recap. So the NLF is the essential principle behind the CE marking, giving common requirements for all sectoral legislation defining product compliance. So this is really an important file. It defines all the visible requirements, what is on the product, such as CE mark, contact address, and other information, and also all these requirements that are backstage that the manufacturer and other economic operators need to do about conformity assessment, technical documentations, the placing market concept, etc., etc. But we need targeted amendments. So we don't think we need a full revision of the NLF, but we need some targeted amendments in regards of circular economy, on digitalization. Also, we did not mention that before, but the recovery of efficient standardization system, allowing preservation of conformity, consensus-based global standards driven by European industry and their market needs. So this is also an important concept that we need to recover, and the software release date as a point of placing in the market. So these are really the recap of what we said right before. Yeah.
Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you, Tarek, for your presentations and the explanation on this webinar. We now move to the questions and answers. We have the first question. I think it's to you, Sebastian. To which extent are advertising companies responsible for something in the NLF?
I'm not sure what we are talking about advertising company. If we are talking about the people who makes advertisement on the TV, on radio, Actually, NLF defines nothing. It's not the aim of NLF to do such things. But here you have more consumer protections regulations that apply, I believe. But honestly, it's a bit beyond my scope for advertising company. If this is the point that I wanted to mention there.
All right. Thank you. I would call for Edouard to, if this is not the aim of the question, to write it again.
Yeah.
Then we have the next question asking, can you please once again explain the moment of placing on the market for imported products? Because for our understanding, also imported products are placing on the market when purchase order is placed.
Yeah, you need to check the blue guide, and particularly it's close to 12. It gives a lot of examples on what is the correct scenario for defining the placing on the market. The purchase order is not necessarily the right moment, particularly if the product is not manufactured yet. Just checked again what the guide says on this. If you make a purchase order but the product is still not manufactured yet, yeah, it's not a placing on the market because you will make it available once it's produced. So you really need to check the clause 212 of the blue guide. Yeah.
Thank you. And then the third question, is the NLF a bureaucracy reduction measure, in your opinion?
I felt some, I don't know, some sarcasm behind this question, but yes, it is. Yeah. Yes, it is. You can imagine if we don't have NLF, we would have as many markings as we have legislation. So we'll have a ROS marking, an EMC marking, a safety marking, on other things, but actually we have only one marking, which is the CE mark that covers almost everything, except maybe ATEX. But yeah, this is really a reduction of burden. You can imagine also if we don't have this European highline legislation, we would have 27 legislation for the same act, for the same, we'll see, policy objective. So yes, it is an administrative reduction. But it's true that it imposes some old-fashioned requirements when we talk about the paper requirements. These ones, yes, it's a nightmare, and it's really time to think about the next steps. Yeah.
Okay. Then the next one is, should the manufacturers also translate, or the ones who are responsible, of course, not only the manufacturers, should they also translate user manuals into languages of all member states into which the products will be distributed, or is it only for the declaration of conformity?
It's also, we have to distinguish two things. We have to distinguish the documentation which is clearly required by the NLF Act. So we have radio equipment directive. We need to provide some information with the product. We have the same for safety. We have the same for EMC. We have this informations, all this, I would say, safety, even if it's not always about safety. All this information must be translated in the EU language of the destination country. It's clearly mentioned in the legislation. What concerns, I would say, the operating manual, you need to check nationally. Some countries might request to have a translated version in paper format. It's, I think, less and less the case now. Usually you don't need to translate all the operating manuals in all languages, and even you don't need to provide it on paper. But we have to be careful, and you need to check the blue guide, what it says, and also the national legislation. This is one of the things that for which NLF is not covering everything, unfortunately.
Maybe I can add, for example, the machinery says the instructions for use, safety information set out in Annex 3 shall be in a language which can be easily understood by users, as determined by the member state concerned, and shall be clear, understandable, and legible. So this is also not very clear. So yeah, the member state has also to choose this, but it should be in the language. If you be on the safe side, in the language of the member state you're distributing to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also it gives some relaxations when we think about professional products. This can be defined contractually, for example, when you talk about B2B products. If you say we'll only provide in English, yeah, and if you want to translation, you need to pay 1,000 more. Maybe they will, the customer will consider to study a bit more English. Yeah.
Yeah, but only for the B2B and the professional users. Then it comes to the non-professional B2C. We have this problem again.
Yeah,
as mentioned for the machinery.
exactly. For when we talk about consumer products, you need to check consumer legislation. Yeah.
From a consumer perspective, whenever I buy something, there is, of course, in Belgium, there is also the requirement of Dutch and French, but then every time is a surprise. Sometimes it's Polish, Czech, and another language. Sometimes it's English, German, and something else. So I think this is also a point of confusion, or at the end of the day, where you decide to sell your product there. Two more questions, one for Sebastian and the other for Tarek. The one for Sebastian, what would be putting into service concept for software and circular economy activities?
I'm not sure to have understood the question. Can you repeat again? Because I don't have this on the screen. So,
what would be putting into service concept for software and circular economy activities?
It's a good question. Putting into service. Actually, when we think about NLF, I didn't cover putting into service concept. I focused on placing on the market. But if we have the situation when the product is put into service before being placed on the market, we can think about installations, about this kind of things. Yeah, normally, whichever is the first is the dates that you need to consider for the product. But if the product is already placed on the market before it being put into service, actually this is the putting on the market dates that matters. And we have rare situation where product is put into service before being put on the market. It's only when we procure an installation, those kind of things. I'm thinking about software. Yeah, but the concept of placing on the market for software is not crystal clear, to be honest, for the time being. But I guess that you downloaded it on the concept, the approach that we proposed, which is the release date of the software is the placing on the market date, is something that fits even in terms of putting into service. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Our last question for Tarek regarding the omnibus package expected to take over, or the question is the omnibus package expected to take over current EU directives in terms of required paperwork? In the current understanding, machinery directive update opened the door to paper reduction, but for products applying various directives, EMC, LVD, etc., it's not harmonized practice. So at the end, manufacturer would still have to provide similar paperwork.
So how this Omnibus 3 package I mentioned will be published end of May. So we don't know how it will look like, but that was exactly what we recommended also in our position. So we had an annex to our position. Can I maybe show it?
Yeah, we have a minute. I don't know if, or maybe we can send it with a presentation afterwards.
Okay. Yeah.
Correct?
Okay.
To save
No
time.
Yeah. We have an annex where we recommend that we have an adjustment of all NLF legal acts. The respective wording should be changed. The machinery is just now the regulation already began to change it for the B, as I mentioned, for the B2B sector, but we want an adjustment also of the Blue Guide, for example, because the Blue Guide is written now stated that the safety information should be provided in paper form. Also, this should be adjusted, and also all NLF legal acts to make clear and to make it legal certain to provide it in a state-of-the-art digital way. That's what we recommend and what also Digital Europe is recommending.
Yeah. Okay, this is the end of our questions and perfectly on time because we are about to finish this webinar. I would like to thank our speakers, Sebastian and Tarek, for their presentation today, the audience for their excellent questions and listening in for this hour. We hope that this NLF meets your expectation, and we look forward to other I would say parts where we might go more deep in some of these concepts, but this constitutes a first step towards an introduction to the NLF, and to our colleagues, of course, Clara and Pierre, for driving this webinar all together. Thank you very much, and we hopefully we see you soon in the next NLFs. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Bye bye.
Bye.